thanks a lot for the invitation to give this seminar, which is about the analysis and the support for the evolution of data-intensive systems. First of all, I would like to say that it's not my own work only, so it's a work that has been done in collaboration with several people, including people from University of Namur, also from here at UC, but also Jens Weber from University of Victoria and from Murcia, or Javier Bermudez. So you can see that this work was hard work because some of them are very, very exhausted by this. So let's start by the origins of this work. Back to 2012, I was actually at a Dachschul seminar, and I've met Professor Jens Weber from University of Victoria, and we had more or less the same background. So we are both working on data-intensive systems, and he was telling me, oh look, we are currently working with the OSCAR system. The OSCAR system is a medical system that is broadly used in Canada. It's written in Java, and it's more than 2 million lines of code large. It's based on, it's using a MySQL database, but since this system is used in lots of clinics, lots of hospitals in Canada, the goal at that time was to try to do large-scale clinical studies, and for that they needed to put all those data together, of course, by respecting privacy. And then, because it was so large as a data set, they wanted to migrate those data to NoSQL. But as usual, when you want to migrate, when you want to evolve a database, you first have to understand it. And the main problem at that time was the lack of documentation of the database schema. So I told him, no problem, we are good at database reverse engineering in Namur, so I can send you 2 master students to do an internship in Victoria, and they will work on OSCAR, and they will try to understand this database. And they arrived in Victoria, and they were completely discouraged, because in front of them it was, they saw a very large database schema made of more than 480 tables, and just looking at the only documentation was the DDL code, made of almost 20,000 lines of code. In addition, they didn't find any explicit foreign key, meaning they couldn't easily understand the links between all those tables. So they tried several techniques that were well known at that time, including schema analysis, but also some data analysis, because they could get some encrypted data, but it was not sufficient, it was not satisfactory. So we had at that time the idea to try something else. And since at that time it was the mining software repositories community was already proposing lots of techniques and tools to support the evolution, the analysis of the history of a system, we said, okay, perhaps we should do the same for databases. Perhaps the intuition is that if we can know among those 480 tables, which tables were there from the beginning, maybe we can start to understand those tables first. So they started to develop this technique of comparing the successive versions of the database schema over time. They had the first prototype, and then they presented their master thesis, and it was quite successful because they got the best thesis award. And then we say, okay, it's very promising, so we should continue this work. And then Lou Meurice arrived, and he said, okay, I will work on this line of research, and I will improve the work of Mac and Jerome. And he started to develop Dahlia. So Dahlia initially was a tool to analyze the evolution of the database schema over time. And the idea was to do it in an interactive and visual way. So in order to visualize the history of a schema, in order to be able to manipulate this history. So the approach was as follows. It started from the Git repository of OSCAR. Initially it was SVN, but then it became Git. And it could extract the successive versions of the database schema. And from those successive versions, it could actually build what we call a historical schema. This historical schema in 2D looks like this. So it's a bit difficult to understand, but it's again the schema, But this schema is larger than the current schema. It's even larger because it includes all tables, all columns that have ever existed during the full history of the database. Okay, so if we zoom a little bit on this historical schema, we can see indeed some tables. So the colors are also important because the colors indicate if the table is still there. They are the green tables. If the table or the columns have been deleted, these are in red. And the lighter the color, the more recent is the table. So for instance, light green tables are tables that have been created recently, the same for the columns. And the darker the red, so you cannot really see that, but if it is a dark red column, it means that it has been deleted a long time ago. But if it is a light red column, it means that it has been deleted very recently. And some orange columns means that they have been deleted, but then they have been created again. This is a simple 2D visualization. If you click on a certain object in this visualization, you can see all the details about the history of the object. So in this case, the orange column has indeed been created, then deleted by someone else, and again it reappeared before at the end being finally deleted. So there was some hesitation between about the interest of this column actually. And then he started to propose a 3D visualization fully inspired by CodeCity, so that you should probably know very well. In this case, a building is not, it's a table. The eye of the building depicts the number of columns of this table. The width of the building means the number of changes that have been made to that table over time. And the color again represents if the table was there, it is still there sorry. So for instance, in this case, all those green tables are still in the current schema. If it's in red, it means that it used to be there, but it has been deleted. And again, for instance, this big table with lots of columns is a very recent table. So you can see that this table is a big table in terms of number of columns, but still it's quite recent. So there is no clear correlation between the freshness of the table and its size in terms of number of columns. Okay. Of course, what is interesting is to compare two different versions of the database. So for instance, in this view, with Dahlia, you can compare two successive or non-successive versions. You can just choose one version on the left-hand side, one version on the right-hand side. And for instance, you can click on one specific table to see what happened between the two versions. And here you can see, for instance, that in this table we have added 5 new columns since the first version. Again, if you compare two versions of the schema, you can see in red those tables that have been deleted, in green those tables that have been created since then, in blue you have the tables that have been changed, and in black you have the tables that stay exactly the same. So they are in the exactly the same state as before. So analyzing this historical schema allows us to extract several statistics. So first of all, of course, the evolution of number of tables over time. It's not a big surprise that this number is increasing. It actually follows the Lehman's law of evolution. So it's exactly the same for classes. Usually over time, you have more classes. It's the same for tables. The same also for columns. It's clear that over time, the number of columns are more and more numerous, and it's not just a small increase. It's a very big increase for OSCAR. You can also compare the number of tables that are created at each new version versus those that have been deleted. You see that you create much more, many more tables than new tables that you delete. The same for columns. So it's also a way to identify big changes in the history. So big releases where probably you needed more columns and more tables just because you have to support more functionalities. And we actually used Dahlia to analyze several other systems like MediaWiki, TikiWiki, and PrestaShop, sorry, between 4 years and 10 years of history for each system, and we had more or less very similar observations. First, the most frequent schema changes that we observe are clearly changing the type of a column. It's probably the most frequent operation that we may find, and it's not a trivial one. Then adding column and adding tables is also very frequent. It's very much less frequent to have, it's much less frequent to drop something. And probably the first reason is that you don't want to delete your data, right? You have to keep them, especially in the medical domain. But the second reason may be that if you delete something from the schema, you may break something at the program side. Okay, so because you may have queries that manipulate this table that you want to delete. So this co-evolution is risky, and this is perhaps why developers prefer to add things than to delete or change things. Another interesting analysis that we could do with the historical schema is the effort that, in terms of database evolution, that is spread among the developers. So the developers, here we represent how many changes each developer is doing on the database schema. So for TikiWiki and PrestaShop, it seems to be clear that they are like database administrators in the team. In contrast, OSCAR and MediaWiki is more distributed among the developers. It means also that the knowledge about the database schema, the different tables, is also distributed. So, for instance, here in OSCAR, you have almost 500 tables, but even the most active developer knows less than 100 tables. Okay, so less than 1/4 of the schema, which may be problematic in order to evolve or understand the database schema before a change. Here you can see the mapping between the tables and the developers that have touched it. By touching it, I mean creating it, deleting it, or updating it over time. Okay, so at this stage, what we have is a way to analyze the evolution of the database schema over time. We have learned that this schema is increasing in size and probably in complexity. We have learned that lots of things are not explicit, so we have to understand, for instance, the links between the tables. But in the third episode, of this story, we decided to go a step further and to also analyze the way the programs were using the database. And we started working on analyzing the database usage in the system. For that, we needed first to extract the database queries occurring in the source code of the programs, in order, as a second step, to analyze those queries and to extract useful information about them, in particular, which tables and which columns are involved in those queries. Okay. But of course, it was more challenging than expected, because today most SQL queries that you can find in a program are not directly, readable in the source code. They are not always written in full in the program, but they are generated. They are constructed by the program before being sent to the database server. For instance, if you are using JDBC, your program may look like this. You actually don't see which query, not immediately, you cannot see which queries which queries can be executed at line 11 here. You only see some fragments. And it depends on the path that you will traverse. Depending on this path, the query that will be executed may be different. And of course, this is only one method or set of methods, but in practice, you may have like thousands of methods like this. So in order to extract all the queries that could be executed in the code, you need some help. You need some automation. The same if you are using object relational mapping technologies, like for instance Hibernate or JPA. In this case, it's even worse. You don't even see any fragment of SQL query in the code, because actually, thanks to a mapping between your class element your class model, and your tables and columns, Hibernate or JPA help you to actually access your database in a call-based manner, and behind the scene, there is a generation of queries for you. So in this case, it's even more complicated to know which tables and columns are used by which programs or methods. That's why we propose a new process and a new tool to extract embedded queries from Java code. And this detection considers three main database access technologies: JDBC, Hibernate, and JPA. It starts as input with the programs, with perhaps also the mappings between the programs and the database schema. It can also direct access. And from this input, it gives as output a list of database accesses, meaning the list of SQL queries that each source code fragment is actually executing. So if we come back to our example in JDBC, this tool, we automatically discover that at line 11, there is 3 possible SQL queries, depending on the execution path that you traverse. In the case of Hibernate, the tool will extract also the mapping between the Java classes and the SQL tables, and you will discover that class customer is actually mapped with table client, which means that at line 9, here, there is a save invocation to Hibernate. Actually, there will be an insert statement that will be executed on table client. Looking at now JPA, it's more or less the same. The mapping is not expressed in a mapping file, but directly using annotations. And our tool will also retrieve those annotations to discover that class order is mapped with table orders, which means that at line 4, in this example, there will be an insert statement inserting data in table orders. Okay, so once we have the list of queries, which was already complicated, we still have to analyze those queries, to parse them in order to identify which tables are used by the query and which columns are used by the query. Sometimes it's a bit more difficult than that, meaning that there are more tables and more columns. So this query, for instance, can be found in the OSCAR system. So you see that it's useful to have a tool to extract those things, because if you want to do it by hand, first it will take time, and second, you may make some mistakes or forget something. Okay, so with Dahlia, we are able to visualize the database usage among the different classes of the system. In this case, we have OSCAR. Again, each building in this case is a class, like in Code City, but it is also in certain color depending on if the class is using or not the database and how it is using it. So the green classes are using the database using direct access, so JDBC. The blue ones are using Hibernate, the red one JPA, and then you have intersections. And the intersection were quite surprising for us to discover that some classes are actually using the database using several technologies at the same time. Even worse, we discovered also that some tables and columns are also using several technologies. So it's even worse, meaning that if you change, for instance, some tables there in the intersection here, so like those 2 tables, you have to master 3 technologies in order to propagate this change to the code. You have to master JDBC, Hibernate, and JPA. The same for the columns here, so we have 22 columns that are manipulated using 3 technologies, which is very surprising for us and probably has a negative impact on maintenance. Okay, so if you put both cities side by side, so on the left the database city and on the right hand side the code city, you can actually select, for instance, one of those tables on the left hand side, table appointment, for instance, and then the tool will highlight the classes that access this table. And even better, if you go a step further, you can see all the accesses on the right hand side of the screen, In this case, all the accesses to appointment are made using JPA. And if you select one of those accesses, you jump directly to the code, and you see indeed that this piece of code here at line 219 is indeed accessing table appointment. So it's a tool that is very useful, we think, if you are intending to apply a change to your database schema, and if you want to see what would be the impact on that. You can actually see our full results on this website. If you want, I can show you how it looks like. So if you, for instance, want to see the queries we extracted from OpenMRS, you click on Tool here, and you have the categories, so direct access or based on ORM. So in this case, I will show you the direct access to show you also the complexity of the queries. So for instance, if I take this one, it's insert into, so it's a select from users, and you see that there are two links there. Indeed, if you click on the second link, you see that there is indeed an execution of a SQL query, but you don't see it in the code. You only see that the query is in a variable called SQL. And this variable is actually the argument of the method here. So you don't see the query, but the tool is smart enough to know that this method can be called at another location in the code, this one, and then it can retrieve the input argument and it can retrieve the string. But the string can in turn be built in this method using other arguments that are also coming from other method invocations. So this is interprocedural analysis. So the tool is smart enough to traverse the data flow graph in order to find the full query and to reconstruct it. So in this case, we have three steps, for instance, here, the execution step, we don't see its method execute SQL. This method is then called here. Indeed, execute SQL with a variable called select, and you see that the variable here is indeed called select, but it includes the column name and the table name that in turn are given as argument of this method, and then the tool is smart enough to come to discover this invocation here and to know that it's units and drug order that have been given as table name and column name respectively. Okay, so I'll leave you play with those results if you want to see more examples, including example for Oscar and for Broadleaf, including examples with Hibernate and JPA. Okay, so we are arriving at episode 3, and in episode 3, we said, look, we have actually everything we need to identify coevolution inconsistencies between the database schema on one side and the programs on the other side. Indeed, we could identify, thanks to the successive versions of the schema and the successive versions of the queries, we could identify this synchronization between the database schema and the queries. So for instance, if you remove a table, you may forget to propagate this change to the code. You may still leave in the program some queries accessing the deleted tables. And what we want first is to identify such inconsistencies, and we want then to prevent those inconsistencies to occur in the future. So we will use actually the episode 1, extracting the evolution of the database schema, episode 2, extracting the database access, and now for this episode we also extracted the mapping information in order to have a full historical data set that is not only about the database schema, but also about the evolution of the programs. And this data set has this data model, this underlying data model. The red part relates to the database schema evolution, so you have for each version all tables and columns, basically. The green part is about the code objects, so all the files, classes, methods, and attributes. In between, you may have some mappings, so it's the cyan part. You have mappings between for instance, a class and a table, so between a code object and a database object. And then the blue part is about the database accesses, be they direct access in JDBC or mapping operations, ORM operations like persist, for instance, in JPA. And we could identify several inconsistencies by analyzing the evolution of those three systems, so OSCAR, OpenMRS, and Broadleaf. For instance, we found that a table deleted in 2008 was still accessed by the programs 7 years later. We found that it took also 4 years to propagate a renaming to the code. For instance, in OSCAR, we also found 6 table deletion which have been never propagated to the code. Even worse, some deleted tables. For some deleted tables, we found new queries. You know, after the deletion of the table, we found new queries added to the code. So this study motivated us to propose a tool that will help developers to assess the impact of a schema change to the code, again using the information that we have extracted from the source code. So this SWOT analysis takes as input your current version of programs and your current version of the schema, plus an hypothetical schema change. As output, you get then a list of recommendations to the developer to say, okay, if you want to, for instance, rename your table into table customer, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, you have to do that. You have to replace this mapping or rename it. You have to improve or change the type, for instance, for the postal code. If you want to change the type of colon postal code into string, then you have also to propagate it here. So that you don't forget anymore to propagate properly your schema changes to your Java programs. Again, you can play with the online demo that we have provided. It's here. So you can actually simulate a change on, for instance, OpenMRS. So if I want, for instance, to go to column concept, I can do it for tables or for columns. So for table concept here, I can decide to simulate the deletion of the table. And as output, I receive a set of recommendations not to forget to change, for instance, here, to delete this query because this query is using table concept. So if I don't delete it, I may traverse the code and execute this query, and I will get a SQL error. Okay, so I can also jump directly to the code here, and I indeed see that there is an execute query on table concept. You can do this for renaming and for deleting tables and columns. So please go to the website and play. The last thing that we could analyze is the evolution of the database access technologies. I told you that in the same version we could see JDBC, Hibernate, and JPA, but actually this was not always the case in the history of the OSCAR system. Initially it was only JDBC, then Hibernate was introduced, and at the end JPA, and then you see that is decreasing over time. The use of JDBC is now quite low with respect to JPA. What you can also observe is that there are a number of tables in blue here which are not accessed at all. Okay, so it may be that we overestimate a little bit this number because our query analyzer is also limited in terms of precision and recall, but it could be still that some tables are not used anymore. So they are in the database schema, but there is no query in the code using it. The same for OpenMRS. You see that there are quite a lot of tables that are not used at all. And you also see some hybrid usage of tables using, in this case, JDBC and Hibernate at the same time. For Broadleaf, it's a fully JPA system, so we have no hybridation, but we have quite a lot of tables that are not used at all, and this number is also increasing over time. Okay, so we are arriving at the conclusions of this work, and also I would like to briefly talk about ongoing and future work in this domain. So first, what did we observe? That data-intensive systems can be large and complex, and this complexity is increasing over time. We have seen that we may have several database access technologies used simultaneously in the same system version. We have seen also that database access can be highly dynamic, and it's sometimes difficult to extract and understand what kind of queries are executed in certain programs. We have also seen that the coevolution between the database and the programs is not always easy, and sometimes the developers may forget to properly propagate database changes, leading to inconsistencies. And we have seen that in this context, automated support is more than welcome. So we have achieved some techniques. We have proposed techniques, tools, and methods for first analyzing the evolution history of a schema, analyzing how the database is used in Java programs, and we have proposed also some support for the coevolution in terms of inconsistency detection, but also inconsistency to avoid inconsistencies to arise. And at the end, this work was also extended, and you will see that at the beginning we worked only on Java programs, but now we can also analyze Android applications. So a very good child of this work was SQL Inspect. So SQL Inspect, developed by Csaba Nagy, is a tool that relies on more or less the same string analysis techniques to extract queries, but in addition it provides insight about the quality of the queries and provides also recommendations to the developers to improve the quality of the queries. More recently, we have started to work on other programming languages and database platforms, including NoSQL data stores, and we have been working on systems that are even more complex because they are using several databases, possibly of different platforms. So that was the Typhon project that just ended. So if you want to have a look, you have the link. And also we are working now on the Hydra framework, which allows you to model a multi-database system and to generate an API that would give the developers conceptual access to those different databases. We are also working on software ecosystems, so systems of systems, and here the idea would be that we would learn from one system in order to provide recommendation for another system of the same ecosystem. And of course, the target goal at the end would be to partially at least automate the coevolution between the schema and the programs. In certain cases, we think that it's possible. Here you have some references about the 4 episodes. So if you want to have more information, you can read the paper, or you can just come to me or ask questions in a few minutes. Thank you very much.